Hello everybody, welcome to episode 4 of my multi-part series, The Warped Minds of Warped Tour. We've talked about a lot of degenerates so far, like V1I, Mike Fuentes, and most recently we talked about Austin Carlisle. And when it comes to degeneracy, we see they have a lot of the same weaknesses and patterns, but as we continue to progress through this series, we're going to see that a lot of these degenerates can do a lot more than just emotional damage. They could even take a life. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. The cycle that can be found all throughout history. Think of the Giga Chad Vikings or the based and red-pilled Mongols. The Giga Chads of yesterday have become extinct, but today's average alpha male is a degenerate Coomer soy at best, purchasing mass amounts of Funko Pops and Disney merchandise, meanwhile consuming copious handfuls of Auschwitz-tier gruel and grade-A goy slop to keep their fragile beta male figures from collapsing. Fuck. Many of these beta male traits can be attributed to the average pop punk enjoyer. Weak, unintelligent, and lacking in standards. But then, the Giga Chad femdom metalcore mommy changes it all, and after a few Applebee's dinners and a 5150, the Easycore enjoyer is born. Easycore is essentially pop punk, but heavier. And Easycore, by the way, is obviously a play on words on the term hardcore. Blending metalcore and pop punk together, while it does create a very unique and distinct sound, it's actually a very universally liked genre and very palatable to pretty much anybody. And if you're not familiar with Easycore, by the way, I'd strongly recommend exploring it. I think it's a really great gateway genre into heavier music. And there's a few very prominent bands that fall under the Easycore umbrella, like 4 Year Strong, Crunch No Captain Crunch, and of course, A Day to Remember. And despite the fact that I am a total gent cell, like, very obviously, my favorite song ever is actually New Jersey Legion Ice-T by A Day to Remember. A Day to Remember was founded by vocalist Jeremy McKinnon, guitarist Tom Denny and Neil Westfall, drummer Bobby Scruggs, and bassist Josh Woodard in 2003 in Ocala, Florida. With roots in both the hardcore scene and the pop-punk scene, they didn't really know which way to go, so they just said, fuck it, we'll do both. And A Day to Remember has become one of the biggest bands in the Warped Tour scene, playing in 2005, 2008, 2009, 2011, 2014, and 2019. 6 times, which is a lot for Warped Tour standards. A Day to Remember is known as a band that could really do anything. Some of their songs were total wall punchers, while others were soothing acoustic songs, and everything in between. They've released tons of albums over the years, but their best work was easily their albums Homesick, What Separates Me From You, and Common Courtesy. Their 2 most recent albums aren't really for me personally, and their older stuff is perfectly fine, but it isn't really what defines their careers. I mean, these guys are in Bring Me the Horizon and Pierce the Veil territory, going on world tours and trending on TikTok. These guys were on top for a very long time. Like, this was a band that you went to Warped Tour for. These were guys that everyone wanted to check out, and you'd be hard pressed to find really anybody in that scene that had like negative things to say about A Day to Remember. However, as you can probably pick up from the fact that this video exists, people started to find reasons to hate them. It's really hard to pinpoint where the allegations first came up for our subject of today's video, that subject being Josh Woodard, is the band's bassist. However, I'm going to start the story in 2020, and then we're going to build on it from there, because this guy has secrets that are some of the best kept secrets in the alternative music scene, or at least they were. On June 8th, 2020, a woman named Kaya Eve would make allegations against Josh. I was 16 years old when Joshua Woodard from the band A Day to Remember invited me to hang out with him after his show that I didn't attend because he didn't want his band members knowing my age. He asked his tour manager to, quote, keep my BFF company in the other room. I was wasted, and he proceeded to f me. I was convinced this man actually liked me, only for him to never speak to me again. Glad to see him, his marriage, and his band are doing so well. I've only thought about him doing this to me almost every day since it happened. Thanks. A few weeks later, Josh would respond to these allegations. I'd like to address the allegations against me that have circulated around the internet in recent weeks. First, let me be clear that events described never happened, and these allegations are false. Up until now, I have remained silent because I do not feel it is appropriate to handle or debate this situation on social media. Addressing this is my personal responsibility, and I have chosen to defend myself through the proper legal channels. Aside from releasing the statement, I will continue dealing with this matter privately in order to protect myself, and my family. These allegations would die down for a little bit, but they actually would resurface. I'm not exactly sure why. I think it's because there was a lot of discussion around Austin Carlisle and Jack Barracat and just people in the scene in general, and Josh's name came up again. But I don't know exactly who brought up Josh again first. However, I think a good place to start is a tweet from the lead singer of Monuments, Andy Cizek, who blocked me, by the way. I'm sorry, Andy, I was too harsh to you, okay? I see the error of my ways. Anyways, Andy's tweet reads as follows. I was on pop punk Tumblr a lot in the early 2010s. I remember when the A Day to Remember bassist allegations began. They were acknowledged by the band. I even remember seeing Jeremy claim that they talked to him about his behavior. 10 years later, they deny it ever happening. So Andy is making claims that this stuff has been a lingering issue, and as we progress through the video, I'm going to provide evidence that this is something that has been talked about in the past, even before the initial allegations that I just talked about. But first, we need to bring up that Kaya, the woman that we talked about earlier, would actually quote tweet Andy's tweet with the following statement. To clarify what happened to me after I came out with what he did to me, he hired a private investigator to come to my home, harassed me with phone calls, and served me a lawsuit. He thought I wouldn't do shit, but I hired a lawyer. My lawyer responded to his petition with a detailed statement about what he did. Once the statement I made reached his lawyer, they dismissed the lawsuit the day before court, as I can only assume it is because he didn't want my statement about him me to be public record. Hope that clears some of this up for y'all. Oldest move in the playbook. Josh would end up making a new statement after these allegations would resurface. In the summer of 2020, I released a statement addressing false allegations that were made against me online. At the time, with my daughter on the way, I personally decided to pause legal proceedings against the accuser once the post was removed. These accusations have unfortunately resurfaced within the last few days, and I must act accordingly. It is not fair to my bandmates and brothers to be attached to or targeted by any of this. So I have made the decision to step down from my position in the band as of today. I will be leaving tour to be with my family and continue to defend my innocence in these matters. I know who I am and who I am not. I admit wholeheartedly that I am not a perfect person and I have made mistakes in my life. I strive every day I am given to be a better person, husband, father, bandmate, and friend. I appreciate those who have supported me and defended my name against the lies being spread, and I am sorry to those who have been negatively affected by them. This decision is the furthest thing from what I want, but it is unfortunately what is best. Being a member of A Day to Remember has been the greatest honor, and I am so thankful for the past 18 years. So let's just recap what we know so far. Josh Woodard is alleged to have met up with a 16-year-old girl. He snuck her in behind the backs of his bandmates, and he would get her drunk and have his way with her. Andy from Monuments recalls seeing these allegations pop up in the past, and even said that A Day to Remember released a statement. I personally cannot find this statement, but he claims it exists, and I'm not sure why he would lie about it. I also need to make this clear. A Day to Remember has never really addressed any of this stuff. They've never even directly acknowledged Josh's departure, even to this day in 2023. And I don't even think I need to tell you that that is pretty strange. And so we have to try and piece together what we have available here. So the first thing that I want to talk about is an open email that was addressed to the owner of Warped Tour, Kevin Lyman, who I promise we're going to be talking about him in this series as well. It is very possible that this email was never sent to Kevin and this is all fake. But as far as I know, if it is real, Kevin never responded to it. The following email was written by a woman named Morgan, who claims to be the ex-girlfriend of Josh Woodard. I attended the Warped Tour date in Orlando, Florida this past Friday, and it was honestly one of the worst nights of my life. Everything started out fine as I spent the day hanging out with friends and watching different bands play. I have several friends that are on the tour as well, and as day turned into night, I attended the barbecue and roamed around most of the night with a few of my close friends. As bus call neared, I began to say my goodbyes and get ready to leave, and made my way out to the street in front of where many of the buses were parked. As I was talking to a few of my friends, I noticed several full beer cans and bottles being thrown in my direction. At first, I was confused and thought people were goofing around until I realized they were coming from A Day to Remember's tour bus. Josh Woodard is my ex-boyfriend, and we've had quite a rocky relationship, so I wasn't totally surprised when I realized what was going on. Finally, I realized that A Day to Remember's tour manager, as well as a few of their techs, were throwing beer bottles directly at me. Luckily, they hadn't hit me yet. However, they hit both of my girlfriends that were standing with me, bruising both of them. Even worse, several of the bottles were broken in half, which would have severely injured us if they had hit us. I began to get upset at this point and walked around the side of the bus to take cover, when all of a sudden Josh ran up to me and got about 2 inches away from my face. He began screaming obscenities at me, such as, "How many did you suck tonight? How many band guys did you tonight? And the only memories I have of you anymore are of me fucking you because that's all you were ever good for. He also threatened me, telling me that if I showed my face at another Warped Tour date, I'd, quote, severely regret it. I stood there crying until he was done, at which point he spit directly in my face. One of A Day to Remember's texts, David Atkinson, also ran up right after that and spit in my face, getting it into my eye. Having quite enough at this point, I ran away crying and found my friends, and we began walking away to our car. As we were walking away, another bottle was thrown at us, and this time it hit me directly in the back. The next day, I filed a police report against Josh, and I've since hired an attorney. Currently, I'm in the process of filing for a restraining order, and I plan on pressing charges. I have never been so appalled in my life, not only at Josh's behavior, who is representing your entire tour as a headlining act, but also at the individuals they employ. Their actions were utterly repulsive. I did not provoke harassment in any way, other than the fact I was there socializing with other guys, which must have sparked Josh's actions. I've never been so humiliated, let alone verbally, physically assaulted in my entire life. I don't feel safe attending your tour anymore, which is depressing as I've been going since I was 14 years old. I wanted to give you the opportunity to remedy this situation before I take my story to the press. I urge you to do the right thing. A few of the crew members would deny these allegations, as well as Jeremy, the lead vocalist, saying on Twitter, "I'm a good person, and so are the people I associate myself with. Fuck anyone who says otherwise." There doesn't seem to be any direct addressal to these allegations, which, to be fair, may actually be a good look for A Day to Remember, because maybe these allegations are just so stupid that they just didn't really care to release a real statement. You also need to keep in mind that this is 2011. This wasn't when people would write like twit-longers and make statements and apologies like they do now. I do also just want to acknowledge that these allegations are really like intense and dramatic. I would also expect her to have like provided evidence of the police report that she referenced, which she just didn't seem to do. I also don't know if there were any charges or restraining orders, but none of that means it didn't happen. It certainly could have. I mean, all of this stuff definitely is within the realm of possibility. And I wonder if these are the allegations that Andy was talking about. I mean, I'm sure Andy is familiar with this specific case, but Andy said that Jeremy said publicly that they had spoken with him about his behavior, which makes me think that there's other allegations that I just can't find for whatever reason. And take that for how you will. Maybe you think it makes A Day to Remember look worse, or maybe it makes them look better. I don't really know. I think there's definitely something to be said that these allegations have certainly existed for a while before the allegations in 2020. Andy says that he saw more than the ones that I've talked about and was able to find, but even with the two that we have, we recognize that this has been a narrative all the way back in 2011 and even as early as 2020. It's also strange that A Day to Remember consistently says the bare minimum or just nothing at all, but it gets even worse because there's even more accusations against Josh. Accusations would come out against Josh on April 4th, 2021. These accusations claiming that Josh is responsible for the death of a 24-year-old man. On the subreddit r/poppunkers, user Lucas Raymond Goat would make the following post. In 2017, Josh Woodard of A Day to Remember was charged with manslaughter. I've never seen this before on this subreddit. Age and location matches up, 31 at the time, 34 now, driving a Tesla, veered off the road and sandwiched the 24-year-old dude in his 93 Civic between his Tesla and a telephone pole and killed him. How the fuck he didn't see prison time is beyond me. Here's the court case to prove it's him. Same birthday. Stop trying to say it's somehow not Josh from A Day to Remember. The news article included in this post has been wiped from the internet. Thankfully, someone had the foresight to archive it on the Wayback Machine. The article claims that a 31-year-old man named Joshua Woodard, who resides in Florida, crashed into a 24-year-old man named Bryant Gonzalez on May 11th, 2017. Apparently, this Josh in question was speeding and driving recklessly. He ended up swerving into the other lane and crashed into Bryant. 2017, by the way, is when this happened, almost 4 years until this secondary statement that Josh released came out. And I just want to remind all of you real quick, in that statement that Josh made, he didn't say anything about the manslaughter allegations. And big surprise, neither did A Day to Remember. Now, it is very possible that this is not the Joshua Woodard from A Day to Remember. Maybe it's another Joshua Woodard, right? But taking a look at this court filing provided in the Reddit post, you see that his first name, last name, race, date of birth are all the same. So I want to just take a second to acknowledge all of this in the video right now. Josh was not kicked out of the band after the allegations in 2011. Josh was not kicked out of the band after the allegations in 2020. Josh was also not kicked out of the band after allegedly killing a 24-year-old man. But on top of all of that, A Day to Remember hasn't said a fucking word even to this day, about any of it, other than one tweet from 2011 where Jeremy says, "I'm a nice guy." I mean, what the fuck is going on with this band? If all of this is true, why were they covering for this guy for so long? And if it's not true, like, this is the weirdest fucking situation I've ever seen in my goddamn life. You can say the allegations in 2011 and 2020 don't have much merit. You can say that Andy Cizek is just making shit up for fun. You can say that there's a second Josh Woodard who's responsible for the death of Bryant, despite the fact that all of his information is identical. But at that point, I don't think your skepticism due to a lack of evidence is really skepticism. I think you're just a douchebag. It is a strong-rooted belief, which requires faith in what you do not know. I've already had to explain this to a few of the knuckle-dragging dipshits in my comment section. I guess I have to do it again. Disbelief is still belief. Unless you are completely agnostic to these allegations and you're not begging the question, then you are just as bad as me, someone who's trying to fucking cancel everybody or whatever the fuck you dipshits want to say. And it's pretty telling, on top of all of this, how reluctant the band is to even just address the claims, especially if it's not true. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Just like address it. I really dug deep on this video, trying to find just about anything that I could because a lot of this stuff was buried. So I'm kind of paranoid that there's shit that I missed. I'm pretty much certain that there's probably information out there against Josh that I missed that I just couldn't find. So if you have any additional information, you have any anecdotes that you remember, let me know in the comment section. I'll try to look into them and maybe I'll try to address that if there's enough to work with. But like I said, I already had a really hard time finding all the information that I already did. And in general, just let me know what your thoughts are. My personal thoughts are this is really fucking sketchy, and I don't really talk about these stories unless I think that they are at least a little suspicious. But obviously everything's alleged, who knows? But other than that, check out my Twitter, my Instagram, my Discord. They're all linked in the description. And I'll see you next week for episode 5. Take care, guys.